From a provider standpoint, that's one thing that kills me with our system is I spend, and now we're getting into the season where the insurance companies are changing contracts with pharmaceutical companies, which means patients I've had on medications for years that finally are effective, I have to go through because they decided to change and work with a different pharmaceutical company. I have to take them off that medication and put them on a different medication and retrial them through all this stuff and put them back on the side effects, even though they've been stable for years.
Who started this fire?
So we're going to jump into this, man. We're just going to do a deep dive. Tylenol's the talk. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And to be clear, we're not professionals, me and Buck, or Fenster.
Yeah, definitely not.
But we speak like we're professionals because we're experts at not being experts at anything.
Perfect. I like it.
So get ready, because we come in hot and heavy with
right.
with our opinions on this stuff.
I've watched your videos. I'm well aware.
All right, good.
Yep.
You know.
I had to call
And you
your
still agree.
cronies and complain about some of the comments. I'm like, Stone, what the hell are they saying on this show? He's all, we got to get some controversy. We got to get you on the show. And
That's
I'm like,
exactly
let's do
right.
it, because I don't know where they're coming up with this information.
Well, let's just jump into it. We'll start with Tylenol, and then we'll get into whatever comments you that are related to that. So Tylenol right now, there was the Harvard study, which apparently was from Mount Sinai first.
The same doctor who orchestrated the research originally started at Mount Sinai, which is another great organization, and then moved over to Harvard. So that's where the same study, great study, well done study, for the type of study that it is. And so it's showing an association with the use of Tylenol during pregnancy and autism. Keyword being association.
And over how many years has this taken place?
That study was done over the course, it was a few years. I think it was at least 2.
At least 2. Okay.
Where they ran the studies. But the type of study it is, they collected data over a larger period of time, but the time they orchestrated the study was a few years, yeah.
Okay.
So you've looked into the research, you read it. I think you even brought it with you here.
I did.
What is your professional takeaway from that? Does that make you leery to recommend Tylenol to pregnant women, or does it not change that at all for you?
It doesn't change it a whole lot in the sense that it's always been a recommendation that it was used cautiously. It was never said, give Tylenol as a free-for-all. And so a lot of the information coming out now is everyone's like, oh, this is a big change. We've got to now caution on using Tylenol. Tylenol was always advised to be used in lowest effective dose, least amount of time possible. It was never advised to just take it anytime you have an ache and pain.
Why is that the case then? Why has that been the traditional methodology? So it leads me to believe that there has been some previous controversy around Tylenol if it's recommended already to be its lowest dose.
Yeah, Tylenol is not an innocent medication. Like every other medication, there's dose limits to every medication. Tylenol has its own dose limits. A lot of those outside of pregnancy come from liver toxicity. If you look around, you'll see the liver toxicity issues, even deaths from the use of or overdosing of Tylenol. That's a well-known thing. If you exceed the daily maximum amount of Tylenol, it causes liver damage.
Did you see that lady on social media that was pregnant and took a ton of Tylenol?
Yeah, that was the first thing that. Did she die?
Well, she was dying, and that was a few days ago. So I don't.
She would. That's a known effect of Tylenol or acetaminophen. That's a known effect. You can't exceed. You can't just take a whole handful of Tylenol and think you're going to be okay.
So would you label that as mental illness?
Potentially, yeah. Like, why would you either completely mental illness or completely uneducated? Like, didn't even spend 30 seconds looking into it.
Yeah.
But is Trump derangement syndrome, has that been labeled as a full-blown mental illness nowadays?
Not yet.
Do you consider it a mental illness?
No.
Oh. Do you like Trump or not like Trump?
I have mixed feelings on Trump. I don't know. He seems to have kind of gone off the deep end this term. His first term, I thought he did some amazing things, had some great policies. This one seems to be more of a vendetta-driven term.
So
I would agree too, and he just kind of runs his mouth a little too much, and it just rubs me the wrong way.
I think he always does that.
You know, he's always done that, so I don't know why I expect anything different.
But charm, Buck.
It does get annoying. I'm seeing all this weird shit all the time. Like, if you would just shut up, a lot more people would like you.
Yeah,
even though I do agree with a lot of his
DNA.
policies, it's not going to happen. No.
You dress like Antifa. Are you collecting checks
looking
from
Jack
George Soros?
shirt? Wait, what?
I said, are you collecting your paycheck from George Soros?
No.
He finances all of that.
Wi-Fi Pros, shout out Wi-Fi Pros. That's where I get my checks.
So going back to Tylenol though, I saw something here on the Instagram, so obviously I'm gonna ask the professional here, but this is for the science deniers. It says Tylenol depletes glutathione from the body. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Glutathione, and that helps your body detox from heavy metals, right?
Correct.
And so vaccines contain a lot of heavy metals, and you inject that right into your bloodstream. So pediatricians are recommending to give babies Tylenol for after vaccines. Doesn't that, like, I don't know, what do you think about that?
So that's a very complex question. There isn't a black and white, just like simple answer to that. It's very complex. So it's one, understanding the developmental process of the liver and how the liver uses Tylenol. In excessive amounts, Tylenol will deplete the glutathione, which then can potentially cause issues. That's a fact. However, an underdeveloped liver doesn't develop the byproducts of the Tylenol as fast. Therefore, the depletion of the glutathione is different. So it's not one for one, adults, children, everything's looked at a little bit differently because of how it's metabolized and broken down. So that's going to change a lot of that. But again, in minimal low doses, lowest effective dose, lowest frequency possible, it can be maintained within safe boundaries and managed just fine. Now, if you're just every time your newborn develops a teeny little fever, it's small, they have a little teeny ache and pain, and you're just throwing Tylenol at them all the time, yeah, you're going to have issues from that. As you've probably heard the term before, the dose equals the poison. This is true with any chemical. There's nothing on this planet that's not toxic in an overdose standpoint.
You
So
just got
what-
own Fenster.
What are the exact
I was
benefits
just
of Tylenol?
bringing that up, bro.
It's like
No
it helps
way.
reduce fevers and take away pain.
Yep,
And that's pretty much it.
pretty much what it does.
Okay.
For the most part, yeah, that's what it's going to do.
Are there other replacements to reduce your fever? And like, can't people just deal with pain? Like, I don't see why people just can't. Like, if my wife was pregnant, I'd try to keep her off as much. I'd want it to be as holistic as possible.
And you want to stay as natural as possible, but there's certain limits on complications that she's going to have. Let's say she has a high fever for an extended period of time. Now, high fevers for an extended period of time has been directly linked to birth defects. So that's what we're weighing is like, okay, what's the lesser of the two evils here? It's kind of a way to look at it. Go, okay, if my wife's running 101 fever for 5 days, there's been plenty of research that's showing direct damage to the unborn baby from those fevers. So if we get some fever, we kind of break that fever, bring it back down, we pull away the Tylenol, best of both worlds.
Right.
If we're looking at complications from, every time your wife has a little discomfort or a mild fever or gets the sniffles or something because she can't take anything else, she's just taking Tylenol every single day, yeah, you're running at potential complication issues from too much Tylenol use.
That makes
So
sense.
you're kind of weighing the lesser of the two evils on that.
Right.
And
And
so-
trying to balance them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for all of our fans out there that thought I cut my hair, bleached my skin, and got a whole lot smarter, no, I'm here.
We already pointed that out, Stowe.
I'm here, and I don't know why we have a medical professional here, and we're talking about Trump and bee stings. I want to know what Adam and what Mark thinks about the fact that Adam wants to go to Tijuana, get his stem cells, listen to some randoms outside of the stem cell clinic, and he takes their advice about fasting. So I need Mark to address.
But the stem cells has nothing to do with
No,
the
the stem cells
fasting.
has everything to do with the fact that you said they are 100. But if you take stem cells and you fast, it beats cancer 100% of the time. That's what you said.
I've never said that. Fine, I'll stand on it. I've never said that, but I will 100% of the time, guys. Let it be known here as the expert that it will cure cancer, any kind,
Everything.
Anything.
Cures everything.
everything.
I mean, if you're going to go cancer, you might as well say it cures everything.
This
No,
is,
but I will say this.
This
I
is
will
not
say
medical
this.
advice. I have to say that.
Where
Yes, thank you for the
he's leading the witnesses, but what he's saying is I've gone down to Mexico. I've got stem cells from you.
Yep.
I go down to Tijuana and get some stem cells there. It's all people from the States that are going down there. It's like packed to get into this clinic. It's reasonably
It's easier
priced.
to get, easier, more accessible down there.
Yeah, I don't know all
not
the
FDA
regulations.
approved
Yeah,
here.
exactly. I don't know all that stuff. I don't know the technicalities. But my business partner started going down there because he had Lyme disease.
Yeah.
Nobody could help him up here. Nobody could even really diagnose him for years. Finally figured out he had Lyme disease. Goes down there a year and a half later, is completely cured. Has no more Lyme disease. And I've literally witnessed the guy like rewind his life. He looked like he was at death's door for a while.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been incredible. So I've witnessed that with Lyme's disease, and then being down there with just this influx of people mostly from the States, but there were some Europeans there as well. You know, you're sitting there getting your IVs and stuff like that, and you're just having conversations. And I have heard one miracle story. It's not one story, but I've heard many miracle stories of people down there who were terminal with cancer or had something else that was crazy, who have been going down to Mexico for years now, totally cured of it,
Yeah.
and living their best life. And I don't know all the stuff they're getting for their treatments because I just go there for the stem cells.
Yeah.
I don't know if stem cells has anything to do with the cure or if they're doing other protocols with that. Is
That's be key information to have to see how they're recovering. But stem cells they're great. They're amazing. That's your whole healing and building products of your body. That's what tells you. That's what tells your body what to fix, how to fix it, all that kind of stuff. So to see as potential benefits of it, yeah, that's why it's being researched and pushed so much. And it is FDA approved in the United States for a couple things. One of them being cancer. A certain type of cancer, and so
not all cancers?
no.
I mean,
Which is like what types? Is it too broad to say?
No, it's a very specific type of cancer. And so it's people recovering from cancer. The FDA has approved the use of stem cells for recovering from a certain type of cancer. It's a brain cancer of some kind. I'd have to look it up and find out exactly. But there's like two conditions where it's FDA approved. And it's like, okay, you're talking about really some of the sickest of the sick people. They've been through cancer treatments. Their immune system's wiped out. They can get stem cells, but your average Joe with bad knees can't.
Right.
Like,
They're treating it like a last resort
make it make
thing.
sense.
yeah, so I don't know. I'm not sure why the FDA hasn't approved it. They haven't studied it enough. I don't know. I'm not
Yeah,
sure why.
I figured they wouldn't approve it at all. It's not making them enough money.
So that leads into a broader conversation about the Western healthcare system,
Okay.
which you are baked into with your profession.
Well, wait, hold up. Are we done with the Tylenol yet? So you disagree with Trump's saying that you shouldn't have Tylenol
RFK
at all?
it was Trump that said it, yeah.
Yeah.
Trump, RFK Jr. I mean, I can at least pronounce the acetaminophen correctly. So to start with that,
There
at least
you
my
go.
education gave me
There
that.
you go.
But as far as a hard, fast, don't take it, yeah, I disagree with him. I strongly disagree with him because in certain cases, the fever that a pregnant mother's going to have, absolutely outweighs the risks of the use of occasional Tylenol use.
Do you think him saying that is overall good? Because a lot of people have like normalized Tylenol as like one of their daily vitamins. I know some people that take a damn Tylenol and an ibuprofen every day.
Yeah, I know many that do that.
It's insane.
In the standpoint that it's drawn a lot of attention to it, so people will actually look into it, that piece is good. So that's 10% of everything he said. What my concern is, what my fear would be, is now you're going to get some mothers who are now completely afraid of Tylenol and their kid developing some neuro disorder from the use of the Tylenol, that they won't touch it at all. They won't manage their fever. They won't manage their conditions. And now their baby comes out with a birth defect directly related to something that could have been managed during pregnancy.
And I've never dealt with a pregnant woman. Adam, you can maybe speak to this more, but are fevers pretty common in a pregnancy? Is it something that you're going to run into like every pregnancy? We're talking about 9 months here, so like a lot of shit can happen. But
Yeah, I mean,
how
there's
likely is that?
There's going to be fevers through a pregnancy, whether it needs to be managed or not. Like, we all get fevers. Do we always go jump and take a Tylenol or an ibuprofen for it? No, not always.
Right.
And those mild ones, they're fine. They go away after a few hours or a couple days or whatever. Not a big deal. But yeah, they're common. From some of the statistics that I read when I was looking into more of the Tylenol, researching it deeper, it said about 50% of pregnant moms, are dealing with some type of fever issue during the pregnancy.
Interesting.
Now, I think that's more defined as like an actual problem with the fever, not just,
That's what I'm
I feel
wondering.
off for a day or two.
So the net value, though, the net value of getting more people to take less Tylenol versus the extenuating circumstances when a pregnant mother should take Tylenol, do you feel like the recommendation to not take Tylenol is better in general?
I think it's probably in some senses equally damaging. It's one of those where if I fear that it scared a lot of moms away from even talking to their providers or distrusting their doctors, because they're being told, oh, doctors have been prescribing this to me and telling everybody to use it for years. Now I don't trust my doctor because RFK Jr. and this research says not to use it. So I'm not going to believe anything they say now. Therefore, I'll just go do it on my own and try to figure it out on my own. And then they're not going to use something that could be very beneficial to them. So I think in that sense, it's making it worse. Whereas in the other sense of, do we need to dig into this deeper? Yeah, that's good. That's beneficial.
So would you say that if the data is inconclusive, is it responsible or reckless for RFK and Trump to push this as a public debate issue?
I think when they come out and directly say, don't use Tylenol, and you can watch Trump's video where he says, just don't use Tylenol, it's just don't use it. That's reckless. When they get into their research and they say, okay, in these situations, too much Tylenol can be dangerous, that's good to look into and get more information and understand it. But just a blanket statements are always reckless on one side or another.
I have a follow-up
Nothing's
question.
black and white.
So do you think that Big Pharma would ever admit a link between Tylenol and autism if one existed, or would that be too much of a financial risk?
I don't know that Big Pharma would, but the thing you got to keep in mind on pharmaceutical research is the initial pharmaceutical research that's done by a pharmaceutical company. That's the research that's available. It's supposed to be double checked. It's supposed to be peer reviewed, that kind of stuff, but it's coming from the pharmaceutical company. They're funding the research. They're spending $1 billion to get one new medication out. Do they have some motivation behind that to make sure it gets to the market correctly? Yes, they do. However, once a drug is released to the market, it continues to be researched. It's not a one and done on medications. Medications are constantly researched for years and decades after they're released. The follow-up research is typically done by third parties. They're done by hospital organizations, associations, different types of group, government entities, things like that. Medications continue to be researched. So does a pharmaceutical company have a motivation to continue to research it once it's on market and then say, oh, we screwed up? No. But all these other third-party companies that do, they're going to release the information.
How many of those third-party companies are linked to pharma?
Most of them are independent research companies, and if you look at the research studies, it will tell you who funded the research.
Yeah,
There's some that will be follow-up by pharmaceutical.
But let's not say directly pharmaceutical. You said, for example, hospitals. Hospitals are directly linked to Big Pharma.
Yeah,
so
they're tied in a way, yeah.
deeply tied. Well, and I want to get into that in a little bit. But so the hospital studies are going to be linked to Big Pharma. Government studies are linked to, from my perspective, the heavy lobbying that goes on with pharmaceutical companies and the government. So I'm trying to think of what would be a study that you could see that's like has no connection, no ties whatsoever back to Big Pharma. Do we see a lot of those? Because like it seems to me most of the stuff that we're seeing in terms of follow-up studies, who's got the resources to spend time studying drugs, there's not a lot of people that are going to go out of their way to try and be an independent study and finance all of that themselves. So who is doing it and how tied are they, how connected are they back to Big Pharma?
That's, there's definitely going to be some certain cases where that's probably pretty accurate, but a lot of your research funding to an independent third-party group that's doing the researching, whether it's a physician organization or a nurses association, or there's companies that all they do is research. They're funded generally by grants from the government. So they submit an application saying, we want to study this. The government says, okay, here's $100,000 to conduct the study. Go do your thing, produce the results. They're not tied into the research at all. They just fund it. So NIH funds a lot of it on a grant basis. So you submit, which you can do, like businesses file for grants. That's what these research companies do. So there are companies that all they do is research. They have the scientists, they have the physicians, they have the experts, the professors, whatever you want to call them. And they're funded on independent funding sources that is designed to try to not be biased. So they're funded on grants where whoever approves the grant is not involved in the research study. And when you read actual research studies, it will tell you it's required to list a conflict of interest, who funds it, who's involved in it, and if you dig into it, you can find out how linked those really are. But you have to do it study by study.
Interesting.
So you mentioned earlier, we are going to shift gears from Tylenol. You mentioned earlier about the potential problems of just telling people not to take Tylenol because it'll create distrust with their doctor.
Yeah, as a blanket statement.
A blanket statement. So I'm going to just kind of put this together in my head so you know where I'm coming from. And I feel like this is representative of where a lot of Americans are. And I think it's growing, that there is and I think a valid mistrust for the healthcare system right now in the West for a myriad of different reasons. And one of them is that you have the way that I see this, and then feel free to pick this apart where
Okay.
after I get done trying to explain how this works in my head. So to me, Big Pharma, insurance, and the hospitals are all basically one company or
Okay.
big companies. And you have Big Pharma that's manufacturing the drugs. You have the insurance is exchanging the money, and then you have the healthcare system, which basically represents like front-facing sales reps, like doctors or sales reps. They're selling procedures, they're selling medications, or whatever else. And when you have like the PBMs that are connected all of these pieces together and are working in that space, coordinating, collaborating, whether they directly are invested in each other or whether they're just having, certain discussions about how they're going to price things, what kind of products they're going to push, which ones are going to be favored products or whatever else. I'm in business. I'm not in this type of business, but I'm in business. I understand that you're trying to drive profits. You're trying to get as much return on your investment of time and resources as you possibly can. So I understand that's the natural inclination. I think the problem is that for so long, Americans have just trusted the healthcare system that it had their best interests. Yeah, and that the healthcare system had their best interests. And what I'm seeing with these three pieces all connected is it has nothing to do with what's in the best interest, or very little to do with what's in the best interest of the people, and instead what's in the best interest of profits. That it's about making money, it's about selling things, it's not so much about creating cures. This is the perspective.
Having return customers.
And you want to create customers, not cures, right?
Correct.
And this seems to be pretty legit. My experience, I've had a couple of anecdotal experiences where I've seen some of this stuff firsthand. But for me, and then I'll kick this back over to you. For me, I was in that boat a few years ago. I just thought the healthcare system was there to make us better. I just kind of trusted in it. And the big house of cards collapsed for me. And then I've done a lot more research and looking into this since then with COVID. So COVID came out, I thought, like most people probably did when it was first, hitting the news, that this was going to be some sort of new Spanish flu or something on that equivalent. Like it was sensational. Like everybody said, oh my gosh, the bodies are piling up in China. All these rumors, everything's kicking around, and then it hit Italy. And the first indication to me that something wasn't adding up was they were pumping out the numbers in Italy about how many people were getting sick and then what the mortality rate was.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the math on the population sizes in those areas. And I'm like, dude, this is not significant. The risk is pretty minuscule. I'm not a mathematician, but it was basic, just simple math. Here's how many people are in this region. Here's how many people they're saying are sick. Here's how many people are dying from it. It doesn't seem like, it just seems like the flu or something like that, right? And I'm like, this isn't adding up. And then people just give me bad vibes anyways, that I don't trust, particularly anybody in the government for that matter, is trying to push this hardcore. Like who was the guy in New York? Was it the governor that was like eating a burger and you can get a free burger and fries if you get vaccinated? It was so corny and so cringy. And I'm like, why are they trying so hard to get everybody to take this rushed vaccine that's going to cure COVID? And then as time goes on, we kept everybody who didn't take COVID is getting gaslighted by everybody. Follow the science. You're not following the science. People who aren't vaccinated are making other people sick, which none of that made any sense to me either. Because I'm like, if you're vaccinated and it works, and I'm not vaccinated, how are you at risk? Like how, but that was the narrative that was getting pushed. And it was so bonkers and so many people bought into it because they kept getting clubbed over the head that they needed to trust the science. Well, now there's a lot of stuff that's showing that
Didn't stop transmission.
it didn't stop transmission. Nothing what they said was accurate in the inception of this. What they pushed it so hard on the American people where we're
And
like,
a lot of the deaths were comorbidities as well. Like the actual sickness wasn't really killing people. It was a lot of just unhealthy people.
very unhealthy people or elderly people were like the people that were kind of at risk
Yeah, that
for
was
this.
the main population.
The main population, but they're telling mothers to get it injected and then get it into their kids, right away. And now it's a child. It was a childhood vaccine. I don't know where it's at right now. I know there's been some going back and forth on that about whether it's recommended for kids anymore. But all of this stuff just stunk. And for me, I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh, I can finally see. This is just a business. This is an industry that's about making money. They've come out with this new drug or vaccine, and we're all supposed to just take it and trust the science. And there was a whole bunch of stuff. Like I had a buddy. Do you know Ken Lawrence? Mm-mm. So my buddy Ken told me this. He had
Oh, I know Ken.
Yeah, you know Ken.
I know Ken.
It was like his son-in-law's grandmother passed away or something like that. And I may have that information incorrect, but it passed away from pneumonia or something else other than COVID.
Okay.
And the hospital was asking if they could label it a COVID death because
They
it got,
really asked him that?
yeah, not him, but the family members,
Yeah.
if they could, because they got reimbursed from the government for identifying COVID in their hospital and for,
Yeah.
labeling deaths from COVID, labeling deaths as coming from COVID because they got reimbursed by the government. And so these are just lots of little pieces. There's a lot more we could go into on this, but there's a lot of reasons why people don't trust the healthcare profession anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it really is stemming from the idea that this isn't really about making us better. It's about making us customers and consumers. Hey, if you guys are sick and tired of taking supplements that really don't move the needle in your physical fitness, go ahead and check out my new company we just launched, No Name Supplements. No name, no bullshit. What's in there is exactly what it claims to be. Everything we produce is tested, and you'll see phenomenal results from using it. So go hit it up and use my discount code right here in the caption to get 10% off your first order.
I agree with some of it. I disagree with some of it. In the sense of, are some of these big healthcare corporations here to make money? Yeah, they're all ran by businessmen. So one of the heartburns I've had as a clinician in this field is that I'll go work, and when I worked at a hospital, is that I'm being told by somebody with an MBA how I'm going to practice medicine or how I'm going to care for patients. That's never sat right with me, where the end-all be-all decision maker of a large hospital corporation, an insurance company, whatever it is the CEO has a business degree or a sales degree or something like that. And that was hard for me, going, okay, they don't have the clinical education. Why are they telling doctors how to practice medicine, which tests are okay to run? And
Real
it always
quick,
came down to finance.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
A question: how, in your experience with big hospitals, how often are they run by MBAs? Or
Most
run
of the
by,
time now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you get some of your big systems that will put, a doctor up there in those positions, but a lot of the board is business people. And I can't speak for every organization out there, but some I've experienced personally, they're business people at the upper levels of these organizations, or CEOs of local hospitals, or a lot of times they're not clinical backgrounds. They may have a health administration degree or something like that, but they're not clinicians, but they're making the decisions on what box those clinicians can operate in. So what tests are they allowed to run? What medications are they allowed to run? And yeah, it's, from what I've seen, it's financially driven. They're there to turn a profit. It's corporate America. That's what everybody's trying to do. So to that standpoint, yeah, are physicians bought and paid for sales reps at pharmaceutical companies? No, I strongly disagree with that, because there is no payment to a physician for writing a prescription.
So with regards to that, 2012 to 2023, so roughly 10-year period, if I got those years correct, there was over $12 billion paid directly to physicians from Big Pharma. And I don't know whether it was for prescriptions or whatever else. This is just something you can Google.
Yeah.
There was $12 billion that was paid to over 800,000 physicians over the course of that time.
Okay.
For various reasons. I don't know what those reasons are, but
I don't either. And that was, you said, back 2010-ish?
it was like 2012 to like 2022, 23, whatever that 10-year
Yeah, so
period is.
in the fields that I've worked in the hospitals that I worked in, I was involved. I was in a position where I was aware of the hospital finances and the physician finances and how they were paid. And at least where I've worked, there was no direct payment from any of those organizations.
But
to
were
the
there
physician.
were there indirect payments?
Not to the physicians, but to the hospital, yes.
Okay.
So the hospital is where I would see it when a physician would order like an additional test or treatments or something like that had additional reimbursement. That went to the hospital. It didn't go to the physician.
Was there any?
In the fields I've worked in.
Do you feel pressure from the hospital, like you're at risk of maybe losing your job if you don't follow these rules set by an MBA guy?
So let's go down that pathway of where I do strongly agree with a lot of what you're saying. So let's back this up a while. So let's talk about OxyContin. You guys have hit on that before.
Oh yeah,
One of the just nastiest drugs that's out there. One of the worst marketed, pushed drugs that's ever hit the market, in my opinion.
Yep.
Is it effective? Sure. But does it come with a whole slew of side effects? Absolutely. Were physicians lied to in order to prescribe it? Absolutely. And so when you start digging into that, but that generated this, who was it? Was Purdue Pharmaceuticals, or there's a whole bunch of shows about it now, but the pharmaceutical company that developed OxyContin, they pushed it out. They came out. You guys have all seen the pain scale when you go to the hospital or doctor's office, like what your pains. They invented that pain scale. So they came up with that. Another side note is your PHQ-9 depression scale that You guys have probably seen that one where you've answered one of those where you're like, do you feel down? Do you feel
think I
tired?
have.
It's commonly used when diagnosing depression.
Yeah.
It was invented by Pfizer. So anyway, going back to the pain scale that OxyContin, this pharmaceutical company, so they'd go to these physicians and say, okay, use this pain scale to assess the pain, and then they would encourage those physicians back then to prescribe them. Well, in addition to that, this was pushed so well from a marketing standpoint that you get organizations like the Joint Commission. Have you guys ever heard of them? Mm-hmm. They're accrediting body like all of your big systems nationwide are accredited by, say, the Joint Commission or one of many other accrediting organizations. Well, I happen to work at companies that were accredited by the Joint Commission. They come in and do their audits, depending on where you work, every once a year or every 3 years, they come in and do their audits. And then one of the key indicators they look at is pain. Well, if your patient had rated their pain at a 5 or above, per their quality standards, you had to have a pain medication on board. If not, you were cited or given a deficiency from this accrediting body.
Gosh, this is crazy.
To have this patient on some type of pain medication. It didn't have to be OxyContin, but it had to be some type of pain intervention. And then if it was a severe pain, it had to be a stronger pain medication. This was pushed by, and I watched hospitals get deficiencies or organizations get deficiencies because they didn't have adequate pain control on the patient's plan of care.
What are the consequences of those
So
deficiencies?
deficiencies are your quality ratings. So you can go up, it's public information, you can Google any hospital or any organization that's accredited by these, and you can see all their deficiencies or their state surveys or any of that type of stuff, and it will show the deficiencies. So if you've got one doctor that is constantly going against the grain and saying, okay, I'm not putting these patients on it because, one, I don't believe in the medication or I don't think they need it. We've worked out some other stuff. We're using alternative pain treatments. Then the hospital, if the hospital is getting a deficiency because of what an employee is doing, whether it's a doctor or whoever else, connect the dots on your own on what's going to happen there from a performance standpoint. And so, yes, there was definitely pressure on that. That's one thing that's always given me heartburn is these organizations, accrediting organizations that would come into these companies that really just add overhead to the business because you have to do additional paperwork, additional tracking, and did it really improve the patient's quality of care? That's debatable. But this is one of those, again, taking OxyContin as the worst example. This was fueled by, say, these accrediting bodies that would cite these organizations if they didn't use the medications. So, yeah, answer your question in a long way.
And if you get enough of those as a doctor, you could be fired or,
it would definitely affect your performance and your contract with the hospital for sure. If you're responsible for causing the hospital's publicly reported quality dating to go down because of what you're doing.
Well, so those aren't necessarily attached to you. It's more the hospital that you work for.
It's attached to the hospital who's accredited, but
Your name's
when the
on it.
hospital gets the report, it goes into very deep detail on which patient chart it was, who ordered it, who didn't order it, who did this. So the hospital has all that detailed reporting. Yeah.
Interesting.
So
And that's public.
The final reports are public. The details of it are not because there's too much protected information in there. But yes, you can see, okay, did this hospital violate, they had their last survey, where were their deficiencies or weak areas? And they want it all publicly reported so people can pick quality organizations.
That's crazy.
None of this seems surprising to me at all. This is kind of my premise, what my operating theory right now about what Western medicine is. I'm glad you brought up OxyContin because that was an example of where big pharmaceutical companies just lied about it.
Yeah.
They lied about the side effects, knowingly lying about it.
Knowingly lied about it.
And I think it's important to note, again, talking about mistrust with the healthcare system, that in this century alone, pharmaceutical manufacturers have paid out over $126 billion in lawsuits in the last 25 years.
Yeah.
$126 billion.
Oh, yeah.
That is staggering to me. In 25 years, those are just the lawsuits that you've lost. So, and a lot of them they're losing those lawsuits because they lied.
Yeah. Yeah, the information is not disclosed. Is typically there's a side effect that people are experiencing and it wasn't disclosed in the advertising or the packaging or something like that.
So this goes back to that idea of research. How much of the research can you actually trust? Because you're looking at this, for example, like what we're talking about right now, and it's like, I mean, not only do you have the research largely being paid for directly and indirectly by the healthcare industry itself, but then you have pharmaceutical representatives on every single major news network on their boards.
Yeah.
And the news networks exist largely because of the financing from Big Pharma. So you have hospital doctors, physicians, nurses, and you have the news that are pushing this as the sales force for this industry that's interested in making money and clearly doesn't give a shit, from my observation, about, our health. It's more, those are what's the word they use for death counts? Like, that's an acceptable death rate.
Yeah.
That's an acceptable
yeah,
death rate
I
to
know what
who?
you're talking about.
Who is that an acceptable death rate to? It's not to the person who's
general
dying,
statistic, yeah.
their family, but that's how they operate. It doesn't. It's like livestock. It's like numbers. It's just like, yeah, we can get away with this. We'll bake the performance in with lawsuits, so we know we're still making huge amounts of money off of this, even though we're paying out massive sums for just absolutely lying to people. And then we are continually told that we need to trust the experts.
Yeah.
I have a question that's strongly related to what Adam is saying here. If accountability actually mattered, right? Why were Big Pharma and Dr. Fauci granted blanket immunity while pushing a rushed vaccine? It's almost like the whole system was rigged to protect them. And I mean, I saw this on my personal end too, like just people treating me like dog water for not taking the vaccine and for trying to protect my family for something I didn't even know what was in it, and it had been rushed really fast. It feels like the system is what Adam is saying, is rigged to protect profit rather than patient.
I think you're just talking about how the country functions as a whole. Like the lobbyists who push for that type of stuff, the protections are in place. I think you can really take this across almost any industry.
I think so too. I think that's a great point.
I think it's just a part of how and I'm on board with you. I don't really trust anything the government says.
Yeah, nothing.
Nothing. Really, I'm on.
I like Trump, and I don't trust what Trump says.
Oh,
most of the
yeah,
time.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like
Same
him
way.
because, I mean, to be fair, it was Kamala or Trump, and I think my opinion, we clearly won in that debate on who would have been a better president. With that being said, the establishment, anything that's coming out of the government, I just
agree
don't
with that.
trust.
So you've seen this, and this rubs you the wrong way.
Yeah.
And what would you say is the answer? Like, how do we weed out the bad ones or the people that are influenced?
Yeah, the people
Or how do
that
we
listen.
change the system? Like, what do you see as like the first step forward to something better, where we can have these checks and balances?
Can it be
We can get
fixed?
a third party
I
for
don't
everything.
know, honestly, I don't have a fix all. If I had a magic wand, I don't know how I fix it. I think one of the big areas too is we're looking at from a corruption standpoint is our insurance companies.
Yep.
I think insurance companies are one of the big. Is socialized medicine the answer? No. Look at all the issues over there. But is there maybe some modified blended version between the two systems that might work? I don't know. But just when you're bored and you want to be sick to your stomach, just Google how much money these insurance companies make, and the CEOs of the insurance companies like United Healthcare and some of the other big ones. Look how much money their executive team makes. You can Google it. It's public information. They're publicly traded companies. Look it up and just feel worse about yourself.
Especially after they deny your claim.
Yeah, and that from a provider standpoint, that's one thing that kills me with our system is I spend, and now we're getting into the season where the insurance companies are changing contracts with pharmaceutical companies, which means patients I've had on medications for years that finally are effective, I have to go through because they decided to change and work with a different pharmaceutical company. I have to take them off that medication and put them on a different medication and retrial them through all this stuff and put them back on the side effects, even though they've been stable for years. But that requires a whole bunch of extra paperwork on my back end, trying to fight it, doing prior authorizations, trying to get stuff approved, additional testing, none of that stuff. Physicians, this is kind of where I get heartburn on people who say, providers are paid for this stuff, because all this stuff we do behind the scenes, there's no reimbursement for that. There's no payment for that. We only get paid for the appointment. We don't get paid for anything we do in between appointments. At least in my model.
But there is
my
pressure to do certain things that reflect well in the hospital.
in a hospital setting, yes.
Yes,
Right.
and generate revenue.
So is that part of the reason that you left the hospital scene?
No, it's just when I changed routes. I was in a managerial role. I wanted to get back into direct patient care because I was tired of the system functioning how it was, and I wanted to be able to treat people kind of like I described initially. I want to just help people with their quality of life and not be tied into a box of I have to treat this way. They're going to come in for blood pressure. I have to use these standards, cholesterol. I have to put them on a medication here. There's a quality index that says if they have high blood pressure and diabetes, I have to put them on a cholesterol medication for this quality index. I don't give a shit what the quality index says. If they don't need a cholesterol medication, I'm not putting them on a cholesterol medication. I'm not just going to add a medication.
I think that makes you rare. I think that
Yeah.
that's uncommon.
That's why I own
mindset.
my own practice.
Yeah. Okay. So
So is that what it takes then? These doctors have to go out and
to a
and
degree,
take
and that's
that
why
leap
you
of
see
faith.
a lot of those popping up now. That's why you
Okay.
see so many smaller clinics again. There was a time where it was, a privately owned doctor's office. That's how it. When I was a little kid,
That's
I
how I
went to a
remember
little
it.
doctor's office, and then they were all purchased by your big companies, and now you're seeing these little ones pop up here and there. But then you run into an insurance game. Can you get the insurance contracts?
And if any of this content resonates with you, feel free to come check out our community, our brotherhood. It's called Doughboy Nation. I would love to see you there. We have these types of conversations every Sunday. We sit around the virtual fireside and we talk about all things that are taboo. We talk about all things that really matter in this life with an open mind and with an open heart. There's no dogma. There's no expectation for everybody to agree. In fact, we value diversity around the fireside so long as it's authentic and it's truthful. Hope to see you there.
I went down a rabbit hole the other day talking about insurance and stuff where I was watching this surgeon, this lady. She was on a peer-to-peer call with an insurance company. And
I've done many of those.
yeah, so peer-to-peer calls for people who don't understand is basically a doctor who is about to give a procedure to a patient. If the insurance is deeming that isn't maybe the most viable treatment for that patient, they will make the doctor go and take a phone call with a doctor that the insurance company has hired, and they talk and have a discussion on whether it's needed. This particular instance, this person was in very much need of this procedure, and the peer that this woman was talking to, this surgeon, was not at all related in the field of medicine and study that the person that she was talking on the phone to, like, they were not related at all. The person did not know what they were talking about in regards to this patient and the procedure that she was trying to perform. And she was just, the guy kept just saying, yeah, we're not going to approve this. And she's just like, well, what field of study are you in? And then he would answer her and she'd be like, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. How do you have authority or a say in this when you don't even study this kind of medicine? And I feel like this is a big bureaucratic problem where patients are in need, like people who are actually in need of procedures, are not getting treated because a doctor that was hired by the insurance company is saying, they don't need that, while their provider who's seeing it firsthand is like, they do.
Yeah. So that's the exact scenario I'm talking about. So I've done several of those peer-to-peers myself, and I've been on the phone with them discussing a test I wanted to run for a patient because I'm trying to look at, something that's going on with the patient. I get on, have this whole conversation, and she's like, oh yeah, so they're having these symptoms and this, and we're like on the same page. I'm like, this conversation's going great. This is going to be a no-brainer. And we finish the conversation, and she goes, I'm going to go ahead and deny it still.
Denied.
I'm like, then why did we have this whole conversation? But no, I've done it several times. I can give an example of my wife who was diagnosed and treated with breast cancer at 35. She's had all the treatments and everything done. She's now 12 years, clean from the cancer. But we continue to, and with her primary care, she continues to monitor, the blood work, the cancer markers, things like that. And so if they spike, then we want additional testing, which the additional testing for her situation is a PET CT scan, the most expensive imaging scan that's available. But it's the only one that can see what she's looking for. A CT won't do it, an X-ray won't do it, even an MRI won't catch it to the degree that they need the detail. Every single time this happens, the doctor's on the phone, and he literally he's an amazing doctor. I really like this guy. But he spends hours writing appeal letters, getting on the phone, doing peer-to-peer, and he'll do 3 or 4 peer-to-peers until they stop taking his phone call.
Unpaid.
Denied. Yeah, all that's unpaid.
Yeah, that guy's
And
a badass then.
Then he's then it still gets denied. And so then we've gone in a couple times and we're dropping $7,000 on an imaging test just to get that done. And then fortunately it's all been okay, but it's the same type of story. Stuff happens all the time. But you get into those big systems. That's where I get defensive of primary care providers and such, is the box we're given to function in, how small that box is what's really aggravating. And what we're allowed when we order a medication. We've trialed and errored 5 other medications, and we still get a denial on the one that actually works. Or we've had them stable for 5 years, and now they want to take the medication away because our contract with the pharmaceutical company changed. Or testing, so where our hands get tied, and then we're doing all this additional legwork, and there's no additional reimbursement in my model, in my primary care small clinic model.
So
Interesting
earlier when we were talking about Tylenol,
Yeah.
you were concerned that Trump's statements, RFK statements, would create mistrust with the healthcare industry. But,
Fueling that mistrust.
but so far, everything you've said has fueled that mistrust.
Oh, I know. I agree with you
So
on
should
a
we-
big, large-scale corporate America standpoint.
Yeah.
The system's a mess.
Yeah.
I agree with that. It's the system I operate in and work in, and so I make it work for the patients I treat. But no, at the high levels, yeah, I don't disagree with you on that stuff. I wish I could debate with you on it, but
Well, no, I this is fascinating, and this is good to get your unique perspective, being in the trench work and seeing it, and also just how open-minded you've been about it. Because I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of friends of mine in the medical field, and which is what's interesting is the evolution that's happened, particularly
Yeah.
in light of what's happened with COVID, where I would get in these debates with my friends that are nurses. I have family members that are doctors, and it was like, no, you need to take this. It's good for you. Da 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 da. And we would get in these arguments. I would explain why. I didn't have any research to explain it, but just like, hey, here's the numbers. Like I mentioned earlier, here's
Yeah.
why I don't feel
yeah,
comfortable
your gut
taking
tells you
advice.
something's off.
Yeah, something's telling, and my gut's telling me something's off. Something's really fishy here.
Yeah.
And I can see a huge financial upside for an industry that clearly is more concerned about financial success than they are about curing patients. So I'm getting in these debates with them. Well, now, fast forward 4 or 5 years, most of them are where I'm at now. It
Yeah.
kind of has rattled them, that whole experience with
Oh, yeah.
COVID, where they're like, oh my gosh, follow the science really means follow the money.
Yeah. No, I agree with that to a point. I think there's ways to navigate around it. If you just take a kind of a narrow-minded approach to doing your research and go, okay, I like this research only. When you broaden how you look at the research, which I think you've got to look at it from multiple angles. When I research a topic, just how I do it, I'll look, let's say the Tylenol, for example. I'll go, okay, this research, and I'll go read the research, says Tylenol causes or is associated with autism. And then I want to look at it from the other way and say, does it not cause autism? And so I research the articles from different ways on purpose. But then as you broaden that, then you can start to see, okay, if we think corporate America healthcare is bad, then let's just look at the research from other countries. Sweden does a lot, England does a lot, China does a lot, Japan does a lot. Do you want it? So then you start pulling international studies, which is a different demographic, but it still gives you a lot of similar information. Like on the Tylenol acetaminophen study, Sweden just finished a little while ago a study on 2.5 million children, specifically looking at acetaminophen during pregnancy and the risk of autism. And when they removed the confounding factors, genetics, maternal health issues, BMI, a bunch of different factors, they found no association whatsoever.
Interesting.
Are they corrupt like us? Maybe. Who knows? But it's not funded by American research.
Why do you think autism has gone up so much? Because
All-
the way I see it, it's a lot of factors. It's microplastics, it's the pesticides, it's the food we're eating, it's all these different things. And maybe Tylenol, I kind of put Tylenol in that same basket
Sure.
of bullshit
So-
that's happening. But what do you think?
Before
one
you
thing-
wait, before you answer that though, I
Yeah.
want to piggyback one other thing on top of that. Autism rates right now, the big discussion is how much do vaccines affect autism rates, right? And you have RFK who came out with the one on hepatitis B saying it was like over 1,000% increase in autism
See,
rates.
and I've looked for that.
So I'm just throwing stuff.
Yeah,
but
no,
but
I'm
this
just
is-
saying on that one specifically, on the hepatitis B being 1,000, I actually went to try, because I actually saw your video on that when you made the comment. So I'm like, where did that come from? I've tried to find it. I can't even find that. Like, I can't find anywhere where there's any information saying hepatitis B increases your risk of autism 1,000%. I can't find it, like, even just stuff about it. I can't find anything about it.
Do you think that's intentional?
I don't know where
I'm
it came
going into the rabbit holes. I mean, to
I
keep
don't
it
know.
hidden. Like, let's bury that
Maybe.
shit.
I
We
don't,
got a lot
maybe,
of money with a lot of
maybe.
flex.
It's possible, but here's the one thing I was going to say about all of those studies is there's just to kind of support what you're saying is yes, it's very complex, it's very multifactorial, but what continually comes back in the research is they can't disprove anything that contributes to it. So any of the research where you look at it, okay, does Tylenol cause it? There's an association. Can they disprove that Tylenol doesn't cause it? No, they can't do that either. So that kind of goes into that. So it's multifactorial. The most common theme that's consistently through all the research I read is genetics, a genetic component. Now, I'm a big factor. One thing I push all the time is cleaner foods, healthier eating, avoiding chemicals, stuff like that. There has to be some correlation with all of the shit we're exposed to in the air, in our food, in our clothes, all that kind of stuff. There has to be some effect from that, right? What it is, we don't know. But, kind of looking at some of that, stuff. It's hard to say. It's, what's the cause?
Yeah. Do you do any of the genetic testing?
I don't. No, that goes into a specialist. I can run some of the initial testing.
Like off the blood work and stuff?
Yeah, the initial blood work and stuff. But one thing that you do have to keep in mind when looking at the rapidly increasing autism rate is how it's diagnosed. That's changed drastically.
Oh, really?
So-
How so?
So if you look up your DSM-5 criteria, so diagnostic medicine for what symptoms does a patient have to have or what conditions does a patient have to have in order to diagnose a person with this condition or that condition. So DSM-5 is the manual. The DSM-5 now probably, last time I should have counted closer, but it's like 15 or 20 different things that you can look at to diagnose someone with autism or someone on the spectrum or neurodivergence.
And they just need to meet a few of those in order. Okay.
And so when we have diagnostic criteria, it'll say, okay, here's a list of them. They have to meet at least one in section A, another one in section B, and then it could be a few in section C, something like that.
Okay.
So that's the current DSM-5 criteria for a disorder like this. You go back to the 80s, the DSM-3, it had 5 criteria. There was only 5 certain things that you could look at to diagnose someone with autism. It wasn't well known back then either. There was also a stigma attached to it, so people weren't being tested for it. Now it's common knowledge. It was pushed, Jenny McCarthy, John Travolta, that had this big run a few years ago. Autism is caused by vaccines. They drew a lot of public attention to it, so there was some good that came out of that. But looking at all that, one, how we diagnose it, how much more people are taking their kids to be tested for it, how many more symptoms are common with it. So some of that, how we diagnose, is a big part of the trends of any condition. So if you look at just medical research in general, cancer being a good example, the most effective treatment for cancer is determined by how early the cancer is detected. So most of your medical research on cancer, for example, is how do we detect cancer earlier? So it's all on early diagnosis. So that's where a lot of medicine has gone in all fields, is how much earlier can we diagnose a condition?
Right.
So when you look at it from that standpoint, it's like, okay, we're better at diagnosing it, or it's more readily accessible, or it's easier to diagnose someone with certain conditions. That's definitely going to skew the numbers. Prior to the 80s, they didn't really track it. And so you're looking at, in my opinion, you've got a lot of skewed data because you're not looking at apples to apples.
Right.
That's one piece of a super complicated equation.
So some of these dudes are just
that doesn't
smart.
justify
They don't
all
actually
of
have autism. They just like to stare at trains.
Yeah, but it's
It's misdiagnosed
toothpicks.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Which I believe,
could
dude.
be,
I've
but
heard
it's
so
a
many
spectrum.
people
It's a
out
spectrum.
at like social interactions where like I'm mentally ill.
Yeah.
And it's like, really? You
Just-
seem
they
pretty
just
normal to
own
me.
Their label.
And they just, people just love to diagnose themselves or whatever. I don't know if they're like lying to their doctors, if they just feel out of place and their mental's so bad because they're on social media. But I'm like,
Socially
you're,
awkward.
yeah, exactly. You are not mentally ill.
I think it's
You're just
I think it's
making excuses.
not wanting to take accountability.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what
I
I think
think
it is.
that's
I
a
think
little
it's-
bit of this.
Standpoint, yeah.
I just want to own the fact there's something wrong with me, so I don't have to take.
Here's
control
my
of life.
label. This is what's wrong with
Exactly.
me. Instead of going, this is my condition that I need to now manage.
Right.
This is my label, and this is
my excuse.
It became our identity instead of just a condition we need to manage. We all have our issues, right? That we all have to work through and sort through, and your whole platform's about sorting through our issues. Or if I just own that as my identity, that's just who I am.
No, you don't have to
I don't
worry
have to
about
do
it.
anything.
It's
I'm not
your identity.
responsible for it either
Exactly.
because it's not my fault.
You know what's interesting? I shared this before on the podcast, but I thought it was fascinating how Tony Robbins handled his brain tumor diagnosis. He didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, because he didn't want it to be his identity.
Bingo. And he didn't want people to treat him differently.
Right.
And so that totally separate topic for another day. I want to go back to the 1980s. Well, I want to go back to what we're talking about right now.
Okay.
So what I'm taking away from this conversation, and maybe I've got a very selective lens, but what I'm taking away from this conversation is that we shouldn't trust Western medicine. Not always we shouldn't trust them, but in general, it's probably healthy to be mistrustful because pharmaceutical companies lie. The industry is about making money. The news is bought and paid for by Big Pharma. Hospitals are run by MBAs or sales guys that are pushing certain agendas and certain procedures or medications or whatever else. And we're talking about autism now, and you brought up vaccines. So there's a whole bunch of discussion about vaccines being the problem. So, and this just seems so sus to me. Again, significant reasons why we shouldn't trust an industry, particularly the manufacturers, that are just absolutely lying to us. So as our insurance companies, they're just raping profits off, taking profits. And you've got, prior to, if I've got this right, the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986. Did I get that right?
That sounds right.
I think that's what it's called. It
I
was
couldn't quote it, but
It was in 1986.
yeah.
Okay, so that was the act that said, hey, pharmaceutical companies are no longer liable for vaccines. Happened in 1986.
Yeah, I've read a little on it.
Okay, so this is when it was vaccine companies, manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies
Yeah.
were no longer responsible for side effects from vaccines. So to me, right away, I'm like, bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that you don't have to take the consequences of hurting people. Like okay, so that's nonsense. And what compounds that is that prior to 1986, there was like 4 childhood vaccines. It was like tetanus, measles, and polio.
Yeah, your polio was one of the first that came out.
There was like
from
four.
our
There was like
tab.
4 of them, right? Like that was it. And they had 4 shots. And you were saying earlier, with pregnant women and babies, like you want it to be as natural as possible. Well, vaccines are clearly like not natural. We're shooting something inside the kids. And there was 4 of these things prior to 1986. As soon as that was passed, the vaccine schedule skyrocketed. And now, what I have seen is it's 76, not 76 individual vaccines, right?
Yeah.
But with boosters and with, additional shots or whatever, it's dozens of shots that kids are getting.
It's definitely dozens. I can't come up with 76. I counted the schedule today.
I was talking to Chat, so Chat said that was the ballpark, but Chat didn't even seem to be clear on it
Yeah,
either. Either way, though, the point
Yeah.
is whatever.
I came up with, if you counted, so like DTaP has 3 in it, MMR has 3 in it. So if you take each one of those separately for the, DTaP's 5 injections over a lifetime. So that's 15 alone just in DTaP. Your diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis vaccine. So when you look at that, even when I added up that way, I came up with about 50 something total vaccines.
So 76
So it's still-
might not be the number, but it's
still pretty high.
From 4 to 50 something.
And I did include the COVID vaccines once a year. I
Yeah.
included the influenza vaccine once a year. And so, like, not everybody gets all of those. So,
Right.
but yes, on your recommended schedule, yeah, it's a high number.
It seems like an exceedingly high number. To me now, like, again, going back to where I'm at, I was vaccinated when I was a kid. My 3 oldest kids were vaccinated. COVID happens. I feel like the scales were falling off. I'm like, oh, I can finally see it for what it is. Mm-hmm. My youngest son isn't vaccinated, and I don't think I'll ever get any of my kids ever vaccinated again. Because of what we're talking about right now. The pharmaceutical companies absolutely lying about their products to the point that they've been lost $126 billion in the last 25 years in lawsuits, now promoting a growing number of childhood vaccines that they are not liable for.
Yeah. No,
Like, why would we ever
get-
trust them ever? Like, and the research is largely bought and paid for them.
Yeah.
The news is pushing it like it's like a moral obligation to get vaccinated. Never mind, they only exist because of pharmaceutical money. So why do we trust anything that Western medicine has to say?
It's a good point. It's a good perspective. I think you should be mistrusting. When it comes to your health, you should be mistrusting. So the way I look at things differently, I don't work in acute care. I don't work in a hospital. I don't work in the direct, saving lives in the ER. I work in quality of life management, wellness. I work in that field. I look at it differently. To me, your health is your responsibility. It's not my responsibility as a provider for you to come in and say, I don't do anything to take care of myself, but I want you to fix it, which I think has been an old mentality. I think that's part of where the mistrust has come from.
100%.
I think there was a large part of the population who just said, I'm going to live my life however I live. I'm going to be overweight. I'm going to be inactive. I'm going to be, whatever. I'm going to go into a doctor and I want a pill to fix it. And then they're given a pill because they asked for it. And when you're in there as a provider and you're working with patients, that's what they're there for, is a fix of something. Healthcare doesn't offer fixes.
But what created, it doesn't offer fixes. And your point earlier about how you got patients that are on medications for years, again, it's creating consumers, right? People that are buying stuff. I just lost my train of thought.
Saying that they're in there to get a pill to fix it. What causes that?
Well, no, okay,
Societal.
so this is what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Thanks for jogging my memory. So your point that, like, people have just gotten lazy with their healthcare, which I totally agree with.
I do.
Right?
I
Like
think they want someone else to take care of their health.
100%. But how much of that has been created by the healthcare industry? That sort of mindset. In other words, here's our next miracle drug. Here's our next miracle drug. Here's our next advertisement. Here's the thing that's going to fix you. If you got this, so and then we're told to trust the experts. Right. And how many doctors get courses in nutrition? Like
all of them.
What I've read is hardly any of them get any nutritional.
So there is nutritional education. Like I had to do it in prereqs before I could go into NP school, and I also had additional nutritional courses in NP school. And the doctors I know, they all have nutritional training, but that doesn't become the priority of the educational course because of the extent of information they have to learn. It does get kind of pushed to the back burner.
Well, and there's
it's
no money.
there.
There's no money generated by getting people healthy.
No, and
right?
that's why they develop a specialty of your registered dietitians. They're supposed to refer out to them, and doctors should know enough to go, okay, there's something off nutritionally. Let me refer you out to a dietitian. Let them dial in your diet while I focus on more pressing issues. That's kind of the design of it. So yeah, they're all educated on it to recognize an issue and refer to a specialist. Just like myself, I'm not a specialist in every field, but I'm trained to recognize a cardiac issue and refer them to cardiology. I'm trained to pulmonology, refer to pulmonology when I see lung issues. I'm not an expert in all those issues or liver issues. I don't manage those, but I know enough to refer them out. That's how it was created, is you get enough nutritional education to know there's an issue here from nutrition. We've got to refer them out to a specialist, which would be like a registered dietitian. That's how the model's designed. Are they all physicians trained to a level of being true experts in nutrition? No, but that's not the focus of their training.
Well, because
There's only so much you can know.
Well, it
Right.
doesn't
You're
generate
not
money
God.
either.
And Western medicine is designed Western medicine was never created to be a preventative healthcare system. It was always designed and developed to be a reactive system.
Yeah.
When somebody gets really sick, someone has cancer, someone gets really injured, Western medicine's where you want to go. Like it's advanced. You look at it, Western European medicine, that's where you want to go. If you're looking at wellness and prevention and holistic care, it's got some work to do to catch up in that area.
Right.
But there's also there's very limited insurance payments and coverage and financial incentives to be able to afford to do it as a practitioner.
So it feels like the entire system is set up to encourage us to stay sick and be sick, so that there's a constant stream of revenue coming in.
I think I have a biased perspective on that, so I disagree with it because that's not how I practice.
Well, you're unique. Again, I'm not talking about every doctor, right? I think
That's why I said, preface it by saying I'm
right.
biased opinion.
So but in general,
Your
Emma,
bigger organizations, as we've been talking about, so if you're a business, every business runs on repeat business, right?
bingo.
That's to keep your business alive, to keep my business. Every business has to have a steady flow of business. And if I'm a pharmaceutical company and I'm making billions of dollars a year, do I want people coming back and buying my product? Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I think from corporate America standpoint, that's just, if you're in corporate America, you're looking for repeat business.
It's
regardless of the industry.
So that's intuitive, right? That's,
I would say so.
You can observe it everywhere. Like it's common, like you said earlier, it's common in like every industry. I think what makes the Western healthcare industry particularly gross in general, I'm not talking about you. I go to you for my peptides and for my hormone stuff, and I love it. And I like going to you because I feel like you give me a straight answer, and I feel like you know what you're talking about. But the industry as a whole is not interested in fixing people. It's interested in keeping people sick. And I think what makes it particularly gross is that, unlike other industries, and maybe there's other industries that could fall into this, but is they are presenting themselves as the cure while so often being the cause of problems with side effects or with, the third leading cause of death in America. The third leading cause of death in America. It's heart disease, cancer, and then it's the healthcare system. Mm-hmm. Like, so you have a pretty good chance of being killed by our healthcare system.
Yeah.
So,
I wish I could disagree with you on that.
I wish you could too. I wish it wasn't this way. I wish we could wave a magic wand and there could be
Right.
some accountability and we could have some. So that's what makes, I think, the healthcare industry particularly gross outside of just general business industries trying to make money, which we all understand is at play. Is they're saying, no, we're going to cure you while we're making you sick, and you have a high likelihood of dying from what we're doing.
So I agree with the concepts you're saying, but where I think it goes kind of too far is when we then demonize all of the healthcare system because of a couple bad apples like these organizations. That's just the tools that providers are given to work with, and we don't have another system or another box to function in. So a lot of your frontline professionals, like your doctors and your providers, your practitioners, go into it for the right reasons.
I agree.
Do they get caught up in the system? Yes, but that's the only box they have to function in. And are a lot of these medications, every medication comes with side effects, but are a lot of them really good needed medications? Absolutely. So do the pharmaceutical company maybe have greedy motivations to create it? But they also know, as any other business, they have to create a product that's good, that
Works.
serves, it works, it serves its purpose.
Yeah.
So it has to have a good function to it. Does it come with strings attached? Yeah, they all do. But do they do a lot to help people with their health? Yeah, they do. And so that's where, if it's used as a blanket statement, I don't like the statement of, because these greedy corporations are trying to make a bunch of money, all of the product they produce is bad. No, but that's where it requires a really good practitioner that you trust working with to go, okay, what's best for my body? I've done my research. I've done my legwork. Now let's have an educated conversation about it, versus walking into a doctor blind going, I have no idea what's wrong with me. I haven't looked into it at all. I haven't tried anything. Just give me something to take care of it. I think that's where people set themselves
So if you
up.
WebMD it or if you Google it, you always get made fun of by the doctors.
Yeah.
They're always like, no,
No.
that's bullshit. You shouldn't do your own research. So you're like rare, because
No.
most doctors are the opposite. We'll
I
tell
think
you what to
should.
do and what to
You
take.
should absolutely do your own research. So
For
you can
sure.
have-
But I'm
Now,
just
I
saying
get a
most
lot of
doctors
I
don't
get those
do that.
appointments where they're like, I Googled this, and I'm like, so you're dying? And they're like, yeah, it said I was dying. So you can at least joke about it a little bit, but it's like, it takes it to an extreme, but at least be familiar with your symptoms.
Yeah.
Right.
Like your video where you talked about you figured out you were low on testosterone.
Yeah.
You did that research and did it, and then you could go to a provider and say, something's off. I
Yep.
think it's this. Let's look at that. Those to me are the most productive appointments that I have, is when somebody comes in with some information going, okay, this is kind of what I'm thinking. Well, let's rule that in, or let's rule that out, and then let's dig. And with my education, I think it might be X, Y, and Z, but let's look at all of that. And so having more of an educated conversation. So I think that's, again, going back to, I think there's a lot of onus or responsibility on the individual person that a lot of people just don't do.
That's interesting.
That makes sense.
Do you have any? Do you know anybody? This is changing gears just a little bit, but it's on topic. Do you know anybody in the healthcare profession personally that has taken their life?
As like an employee in the
Not like a doctor, an associate, somebody in that.
Nurse.
The reason why I'm asking is
not
because
no,
you made me think of this when you brought up that most doctors, and I agree with this. My experience, I've got doctors in my family. They're good people. I just think they're, for lack of a better term, programmed to think a certain way and
Yeah.
to do a certain job, and they're financially remunerated by their salaries or whatever else. Like
Right.
that they're getting paid to do this work, and so they're going to have a very skewed, biased perspective, like, as anybody would,
Right.
in their shoes.
We all do.
Do you know Callie Means? Do you follow her at all?
No. Doesn't
So she's a really interesting character. Her and her brother wrote a book called Good Energy. So she was top of her class in the medical school at I believe it was at Stanford. She was, and she realized early on that she wasn't fixing anything. She had a very narrow perspective of somebody's health. She was a specialist, and so all the other pieces that went into whatever ailments this person was going through, she really wasn't doing anything to fix it. She was just
Right.
trying to mask symptoms, essentially.
Yes.
You've got symptoms, so we're not going to cure you,
Right.
because that's not what we do. We're just going to help mask symptoms with drugs or whatever else.
Right.
So she became very disillusioned, and she brought up this point. The reason why I asked that question earlier, it's kind of a sobering, heavy question, but doctors are one of the highest suicide rates as far as professions in the U.S.
Yeah.
Her take on that, I'm curious your 2 cents. Her take on that is because most doctors go into the medical field wanting to help people
Yeah. With good intent.
with good intentions, as you said. And what happens is they sacrifice almost every other aspect of their life, their family, their free time, their health, whatever else, because they're just in hospitals 24/7 almost.
And the schooling leading up to
Schooling
it.
is-
The schooling, all the
Jesus.
schooling, and then the hospital, the hours they work
Insanely.
are insane. And she said that her perspective was that the reason why suicide rates, one of the reasons why it's so high among physicians, is because they realize they're not actually fixing anybody. They've dedicated their life, their money, their resources, their time, and it's not doing any good. They just keep getting the same patients back, and
Right.
they're just trying to help manage them on their way out of this life. Like, we'll put some
A lot of it's that. Like, and I've had a 20-year history of working in hospice, so I see a lot of it on the very back end too. But yeah, no, it's discouraging from that standpoint. If you go in, you've got these great intentions. I'm going to be a hero. I'm going to, maybe not hero, but I'm going to go in and I'm going to help all these people. And then you realize the box you're allowed to operate in doesn't allow you to do that. So that's where I've shifted my tune to where, okay, I don't have a fix for you in medicine. I've got antibiotics. Antibiotics will fix something, but I don't have a lot else that's a fix. Everything else is controlling a symptom so that individual can, fix their lifestyle or whatever it is. But no, it's very disheartening and it's frustrating when you go in and you've dedicated years of your life for the education, and then somebody with an MBA says, you've got to function this way.
Yeah, that's gross.
You've got to do it this way. You're now in trouble because we didn't meet these certain quality matrix and indexes. When you're like, what happened to my ability with my license to treat the patients how I think is best to treat, with a shared decision making with the patient? Like, I'm having conversations with patients and we're making that decision together. You don't go in as a doctor and say, oh, here, just take this and go. It's kind of old school way of doing it. But you go in and you want to help and you want to fix and you want to do this stuff, and it doesn't. But that's not how our system is designed. I think it's the bureaucracy and the heavy weight above that and the pressure and the demands that adds to a lot of that pressure, where physicians are like, I'm done. Like, I've dedicated my whole life and it turned out to be crap. I've sacrificed, how many physicians do you know that are divorced?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's another
They've sacrificed
indicator.
families and things like that. And so it's a heavy weight. And so I can
Did
see
you see that?
I would
see
say
that, did you see
just-
that meme real quick though? And then
Oh,
you
go
can
ahead.
jump in, where it's a meme and it says what we think hoes look like, and it's a bunch of scantily clad chicks, and it says what hoes really look like, and it's a bunch of nurses.
Yeah, I did see that one actually. Yeah. I'm a nurse.
So you're a hoe.
So who started this fire?
I was going to say, yeah, that's exactly. I was going to tie it up. Who started this fire? The way I'm looking at it, you didn't like to make those blanket statements, but I would make one about the insurance companies. They're the ones that give the box. They're the ones that are hurting the people, because not a lot of people can afford this.
They have the power.
They're kind of forced. Yeah. So I would say who started this fire is these insurance companies.
I
They're
think
kind
a
of
big
the
part of it.
evil ones.
I think it's professional wrestling behind the scenes. All those guys are in cahoots together. It's how
That's what
they
I'm
can
gonna
help
say.
each other make a whole bunch of money.
See, I think big pharmaceutical companies, manufacturers, insurance, and the healthcare hospitals are all one and the same thing. They're all so
Right.
interconnected.
Well, look
But
at-
the way I look
again-
at the doctors is these guys come in with good intentions and they're putting in a lot of work. And the hospitals are big organizations that are funding a lot of things and providing this acute care, which is like amazing that we can go in for these surgeries and fix people's legs sticking out of there. But the insurance guys, what the fuck do they do?
just
They're
get
just
rich.
cashing
They
checks
approve.
and they're just deny all fucking day. They seem like the more evil ones. And I get, though, that they all kind of are in cahoots and it doesn't really work with just an
It's all
insurance
one
company.
big blob.
But I think they're the most
I think
out of the
the
loop.
issues lies at that level. I think the doctors and practitioners get blamed because we're the face of the healthcare industry.
100%.
So we get blamed for it
Yep.
when behind the scenes they're pulling our strings.
Yeah,
I
because
think
they
it's
know
kind of-
your name. They
with-
know your face.
with
Yeah.
doc-
Nobody
with-
knows what the
They
fucking
control
CEO
my-
guy
Yeah,
is.
it's kind of a
Can I go
Until they
piss
got
off
shot.
an insurance company and they just cut my contract and I can't take that patient population anymore? They have the power to do that.
But it's
Right.
a two-edged sword, though, because doctors are considered the experts and they're celebrated like deity in our
Yeah.
culture, right? So there's on one hand, it's like if you're a doctor, you're like top of the food chain in our country as far as professions
yeah,
are
it
concerned.
has
On the other
historically
hand,
been that way. Yeah.
yeah, you are the expert. So if you screw it up and get it wrong, or if you're pushing stuff on me and you're not you're not clear about you're operating in this box, so I have to give you this medication.
Yeah.
Then there should be some outrage at
There
that,
should be.
that
And I
face.
think there is. In addition to that, it's like your previous comment about the suicides and things like that. The piece that wasn't discussed on that is the liability that practitioners carry. Like, I know a lot of people that work in construction and things like that make a lot more money than I do and carry zero of the liability.
How much money do you make?
Less than you. So you can find me at Cameo Health, Wellness, and Beauty, just out in West Haven. You look us up on social media or check out our website, cameohealth.com. And we'd love to meet with anybody and see if we can help you out.
And one last plug: you're older than me. You're 46. I'm 45.
Yeah. Like
And you look spectacular.
couple
Botox,
months.
yeah,
Yeah,
Botox.
face full of Botox. Yeah.
Respect, man.
So all your
yeah.
aesthetics needs as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
Oh,
you,
look
Mark.
good,
You're the
brother.
man.
Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Great.
In the